I never imagined my life would unravel because of a boy I once helped pack lunches for. When I married Daniel Carter, I knew I wasn't just marrying a man. I was stepping into a ready-made family. Daniel was a widower, steady and quiet, the kind of man who showed love through responsibility rather than words. His son, Ethan, was 16 when I entered their lives, tall, sharp-eyed, and already carrying more anger than a teenager should. At first, I tried to be patient. I understood grief. Losing a mother leaves scars no one can see. I didn't try to replace her. I didn't force affection. I simply stayed consistent. Dinner on the table, clean clothes folded, a calm voice when tempers flared. Daniel appreciated that. Ethan barely acknowledged it. Years passed. Ethan grew older, sharper, more intelligent, and more manipulative. By the time he turned 21, he no longer lived under our roof full-time, but he visited often. Too often. Daniel worked long hours managing a construction firm. I stayed home, partly by choice, partly because Daniel believed stability mattered. At first, I agreed. Later, the quiet began to feel heavy. Ethan noticed. He always did. It started with conversations, innocent ones, at least on the surface. He'd linger after dinner, asking questions that sounded thoughtful but felt probing. "Are you happy, Laura?" he'd ask, leaning against the kitchen counter. Of course, I'd reply, automatically. "But are you fulfilled?" That word, fulfilled, stuck with me. Daniel and I had grown comfortable, predictable. No arguments, but no sparks either. Our marriage felt like a well-maintained house where no one opened the windows anymore. Ethan began pointing that out, subtly. "You gave up a lot for Dad," he said once. "Your career, your independence." I laughed it off, but later that night, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if he was right. I didn't realize then that Ethan wasn't just observing my life. He was testing it, pressing on its weak spots. He pushed boundaries in small ways first. Late-night texts asking for advice. Long conversations where he framed himself as the only one who truly understood me. Compliments disguised as concern. "You're wasted here," he told me once. "You're smarter than this life." I should have shut it down. I knew that. But loneliness is quiet, and manipulation is patient. The day everything truly shifted was the afternoon Daniel missed our anniversary dinner. He called at the last minute. A work emergency. He sounded tired, distracted, apologetic, but not surprised. As if he assumed I'd understand. Again, I hung up and sat at the dining table alone, candles melting down like time slipping away. Ethan showed up an hour later. "I figured," he said softly, seeing the untouched food. "He does this a lot, doesn't he?" Something inside me cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt tired. That night, I talked too much. I told Ethan things I should have told my husband. About feeling invisible. About sacrificing myself into a role instead of a person. Ethan listened. He nodded. He validated every doubt. And that's when I crossed the line. Not physically. Not romantically. Emotionally. I began leaning on Ethan instead of Daniel. Sharing thoughts, frustrations, dreams I'd buried. I let him become my emotional refuge, and that was the betrayal. That was the infidelity. Ethan pushed it further. He encouraged my resentment. He framed Daniel as selfish, outdated, controlling. He painted himself as the only honest voice in my life. "He doesn't really see you," Ethan said once. "I do." That sentence should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel seen. I allowed it. I allowed him to insert himself between my husband and me. I allowed him to fuel my dissatisfaction instead of healing it. I allowed him to become a wedge. Daniel noticed the change. "You've been distant," he said one evening. I shrugged. Maybe I finally noticed I always have been. We argued for the first time in years. Ethan watched it unfold with quiet satisfaction. The final push came when Ethan suggested I reconnect with someone from my past, an old college friend named Michael. "Just talk," he said. "You deserve to remember who you were." I told myself it was harmless. It wasn't. Talking turned into long conversations. Shared memories. Emotional intimacy. A connection I should have protected my marriage from. When Daniel found out, it broke him, Not with rage, but with silence. I trusted you, he said, voice hollow. And in that moment, I realized the true damage Ethan had done, and the responsibility I carried for letting him do it. Ethan didn't apologize. He didn't look guilty. He deserved it, he said coldly. Now you're free. That's when I finally saw him clearly. This was never about my happiness. It was about control, about punishing his father, about proving power. I asked him to leave. Daniel and I separated shortly after. Not because of Ethan alone, but because I had allowed my loyalty to fracture. Therapy followed. Painful honesty. Long nights of regret. Daniel and I didn't reconcile. Some damage doesn't reverse. But we found peace, respect, closure. Ethan stopped coming around. Years later, I rebuilt my life, not around resentment, but responsibility. I learned something crucial. No one can push you too far unless you let them. Boundaries are not just rules, they are protection. And infidelity doesn't always begin in beds. Sometimes it begins in silence, in unmet needs, in conversations you share with the wrong person. And sometimes, the most dangerous betrayal is the one you justify to yourself.